How about a round for both of them? Michael Shure and Jim Avila. Hi, boys. How are we?
We're good.
We're good. I mean, Jim really kind of outdoing me on that background today. So,
yeah, well, it is a nice little backyard. Hey, Mark, did you? I don't think you saw the breaking news yet, though, that I put on the chat so your viewers saw it. But
about Garland?
Merrick Garland has decided to do it. Maybe I missed it in Kibb's news. But,
I mentioned it. We mentioned it, and we said in our mention that you had actually forecast that. You'd said that was likely to happen.
We gave you credit.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I apologize.
No.
I must have been setting up. The incredible technology here.
Setting up that fake background maybe distracted you.
I mean, it's great, but it also looks like he's at the Gerald Ford Library. So,
or that he's getting ready to announce his candidacy for 2024.
I do have an escalator back here that I'm going to go down. And
you couldn't have fit more American flags into that shot that Trump had during it. That's the new thing.
I wonder if Caruso's going to take it down now that he's lost.
Yeah, Jim lives, Michael, in Caruso. Rick Caruso's one of his buildings. So
Well,
it's kind
and now that he has to stop being American.
I'm surprised it's not at half staff, to tell you the truth.
Jim giving us that's really great. He gives you that F1 race feel there.
It is on La Cienega. So
let me ask you about what's happening, Michael. I'll start with you on these. So the special prosecutor, that's an examination of charges that might be brought against the former president. These would be criminal charges, right?
Yeah, and these are related special. They usually have a kind of a restricted assignment, and that's what Ken Starr did, for example, back in the late 90s with President Clinton. He was there to investigate a real estate deal, and then he took it farther afield. They usually have a little bit of parameters within which they need to work. And in this case, it seems to be that it's everything to do with Mar-a-Lago and the documents that were found there, that were brought there, how it happened, why it happened. And they can, obviously, there are tentacles that can reach out from there, but it has to be based at least in the way that it's assigned on that.
It doesn't seem as though this special prosecutor is going to have to go as far afield to find something. I mean, it seems like an embarrassment of riches when it comes to illegal riches when it comes to misdeeds on the part of Trump.
Well, yeah, and that's what, Ken Starr went through the Whitewater and found out that there wasn't really anything that implicated the president there, but had, it seemed, either a vendetta or an agenda at the very least, and took it further. And usually they can, I shouldn't say usually, there's not a great deal of precedent in that, but they do go a little bit farther when they can, and they usually ask for it when it's warranted. And I think that in this case they're going to probably have, like you said, a treasure trove right in front of them. They're not going to need to go very far.
You mention agenda. I wanted to get to the GOP agenda as articulated. I mean, they really, if they stuck the landing with voters, it might be. I'm talking about with voters who aren't just going to kind of not vote GOP across the board. It might have been on crime, on inflation, on some of these things that were talked about, the border, with such fervor prior to the election. Now the GOP has, with a slim majority, taken over the House, and they had a press conference yesterday. And here is what they said. Now, I'll start with what they said in the ramp-up to the election. And now that they've taken control, you'll hear what they said after the election. So here is Kevin McCarthy and others before the election.
What Americans want, need, and deserve is a clear, common-sense alternative. And that's what's happening with the House Republicans. We will provide to the American public a commitment to America.
Between inflation, crime, and open borders, I think voters all across the country are ready to change the path we're on.
No more inflation, no more paying people not to work, no more broken supply chains and abandoned borders.
The Democratic Party, they have a majority. They could stop this crime today.
Tuberville.
Some people say, well, they're soft on crime. No, they're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. They want crime.
These are not good numbers, guys. 8% inflation, that's a bad number.
Marco Rubio.
We have record inflation because Democrats focus on So this is the focus on the Judiciary Committee, the political nature at the Justice Department, and the linkage now to what was happening with the Hunter Biden story.
Now that's the story. This is what they announced yesterday, the Hunter Biden investigation.
And my last question is just, what are the grounds to investigate?
If we can keep it about Hunter Biden, this is kind of a big deal, we think. If we can keep it about Hunter Biden, that would be great.
So that's really what they're about, is it now opening, and they had a huge press conference about this, and as they were queried about other things, they said, no, we want to keep this about Hunter Biden and the link to Joe Biden. This seems to be a party that didn't get the message, or I'm asking you, and I ask you, Jim, do you think there is, I mean, they clearly are jihadists in this way, and there might be something to Hunter Biden. I don't know. I have no issue with that particularly, but I'm just questioning from a political standpoint, it seems like maybe they missed the message. It doesn't seem like voters are really about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. They're playing to the base. At least it seems that way to me.
Yeah, they're making the same mistake they already made, and they're going to compound it, in my opinion. This is not an issue that rings home with independents. You know, the base is already there. They've got 30%. They're, you know, why pound it over and over again on the same thing? Secondly, what's going to come of that? Hunter Biden is not an elected official. He's not in government in any way. His dad is the president. If they found that he is a drug addict, okay, we know that. If he found that he took money from China, then put him in jail. I don't think there are not many Democrats who think that he should be protected. And there's been no evidence that I know of that he is being protected by either by law enforcement or by the administration. So I think that's a dead end. I think it's, you know, the worst nightmare that this country is going to have because of the new Congress is not new laws, because they can't pass any. The biggest nightmare is going to be that Jim Jordan is going to be head of the Judicial Committee. I mean, that is a disaster. It is going to make us all freak out again and get nervous again, because his rhetoric is so, you know, it's so wrong, and he lies all the time. And so we get all upset and frustrated. That's going to be the biggest damage in my mind.
Michael? Oh, I can't hear you, pal. I don't hear.
Here's what I did. I unmuted. How'd that work?
That's better.
All I heard Jim say was to put Hunter Biden in jail. That was all I heard. No, Jim's exactly right. And the judiciary stuff is not great. And Marjorie Taylor Greene on oversight is not great. And that's what you get when you lose the House. There are a couple of factors that we can get to on that. As far as the Hunter Biden thing, yeah, the Republicans are going to try, even though he is not a member of the administration. It's why in the late 70s they went after Burt Lance and not Billy Carter, to age me a little bit, is because Billy Carter was the president's brother. Burt Lance was in the administration. It's why they're doing that now, is to go after Joe Biden, to pull in, to go after Hunter Biden, to pull in Joe Biden, to say that Joe Biden set some of this up. It was his, you know, he made some phone calls, whatever it is that they think is on that laptop, they're going to exploit to the expense, they hope, of the president. And, you know, one of the other things about why they're doing this, it does make headlines. It does play to their base. But there are Republicans I've spoken to who think that they lost this election not because they weren't right on the issues, but because of abortion and because of student loans. And that's why. So that they were right, that people were upset about gas prices and inflation. It didn't play out that way, right? It played out that more people were upset by these other things, or happy about these other things, being able to get those student loans, or upset about abortion. And so that, I do think, is a big miscalculation by the Republicans, especially.
And democracy too, Michael. I mean, democracy was huge on the ballot.
100%. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. It's true. That was a big part of why people voted. And it was a big part of why, you know, people were criticizing the president for making these sort of nebulous speeches on democracy. It turns out Joe Biden has been in politics for over half a century and knows something about running for office because it was right. And that's what people went after. I think that the the Congress is going to have some growing pains. It's not going to be as easy, I don't believe, and I'm a little naive about this stuff sometimes, but I don't believe it's going to be as easy for Jim Jordan to be Jim Jordan in the majority. I think that there are going to be some Republicans who are going to be less eager to go with a game plan that failed last time in terms of electoral power. I also think there are Democrats that are working on some moderate Republicans to switch parties. I don't think it's not going to be a three seat minority. So I don't think it's going to be effective. And I don't think there are enough that can switch control of the Congress. But a speaker is going to have a lot to do with that. And we'll see what happens with Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, I will follow up. I want to continue this conversation in a moment. I have to take a quick break to talk to Steve. But if you guys could stand by, please mute yourselves. Please mute yourselves for the very important conversation I'm about to have with our guy. He is our founding sponsor. So let's get on with it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Welcoming into the mix, Steve Moskowitz. Steve, just talking about politics, but the reality is, regardless of who's in charge, Democrats or Republicans, I mean, the tax code is the tax code. It may change a little bit around the edges. You find the edges to help out your clients. I'm wondering if you think, I want to talk to Steve right now. I want to know if you think that the addition of all the IRS agents, that is something, the IRS enforcement was sort of relaxed, particularly on the, in the last administration, it was particularly on the higher end taxpayers. As usual, those of us who aren't, the super high earners, we end up having to deal with enforcement a bit more. Is it that way? They've certainly added more agents and more enforcement.
The IRS is adding 87,000 new IRS agents, and President Biden said that for every dollar he invests in the IRS, he expects multiple dollars to be returned. And the bottom line is, of course, there's going to be a lot more enforcement. And part of the reason for that is political, in that when a politician seeks to raise taxes, he or she gets a lot of pushback. We remember when we were young children and President Bush said, "Read my lips, I'm not going to raise the taxes," changed his mind. That probably cost him the election. But enforcement of taxes, most people don't mind. So, well, I pay my taxes. Yeah, go after the guy that's not paying. And these agents, like any large group of people, especially they're all new, they want to show their bosses what they can do. Sometimes people get heavy-handed. The government is there's a criminal aspect in enforcing taxes too, which is usually not enforced, but they're talking about doing more criminal enforcement. And you have these 87,000 people looking to show their bosses, hey, I can do a good job and bring this money in. So I'm predicting that you're going to see a lot more people being chased by the IRS. And they're talking about things like unfiled tax returns. We have a lot of clients that very, very commonly, they look at their tax return, they see they owe money, they make a mistake, they don't file the return, then year two comes around, they say, well, how can they file the taxes from year two when they didn't file year one? By the way, they still don't have the money, and then becomes a lifestyle, a criminal-like lifestyle. Well, those people are going to be chased. People that can't pay their taxes, especially now, COVID hurt so many people with jobs and businesses. Another thing that happened, people took money out of their retirement plans to replace the wages they lost, and the government says, hey, where's the taxes on that? So there's so much going on. Yes, there's going to be a lot more enforcement, not to mention just look at the money the government is spending, all these programs. We talk about ERC all the time. I love ERC. It's all this money flowing into my clients and other people's clients too. But where does this money come from? Not to mention all the other government programs, PPP and RRF. Was like good money to the restaurants. There was a special program for performing arts. The government gave away an incredible, unbelievable amount of money. Not to mention all the money that's going to support those poor people in Ukraine. They're being attacked by Russia. I mean, basically, they're fighting the war for the West. But tremendous money is going over there. And
you're saying they get that money from taxpayers.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm predicting there's going to be, more taxes. There's going, not to mention, look at California all of a sudden from surplus. Hey, we got this big deficit. What are we going to do? So, California has their eyes out. And the bottom line, and as well as other states, for those of you watching in other states. And the bottom line is, there's probably going to be major tax activity And it's so much better to make a deal now while you still can, basically with the more experienced agents. Then, a lot of times new agents coming in, it takes a while until they get seasoned, and maybe they do step over the line sometimes. Like any large group of people, you're going to have some that are perfect, some that are very challenged, and most of them are in between just trying to do their job.
Well, we've mentioned it before, and we'll mention it again. Steve Moskowitz, a great advocate for you. And if you are in a jam, maybe have not paid your taxes before for the reasons that Steve was just detailing, reach out to Steve. It can be dealt with. You can end up with a positive outcome, but you need to contact Moskowitz. Do it at 888-TAX-DEAL, 888-TAX-DEAL. 888-TAX-DEAL. You can also reach him online, MoskowitzLLP.com, MoskowitzzLLP, MoskowitzLLP.com. Steve, have a great weekend. Great talking to you.
Pleasure. Thanks so much.
Steve Moskowitz, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let's get back to politics with Jim Avila and Michael Shure. It's come in now, and I was going to mention this anyway, so I can reference even the chat, that the number of, it's an odd position the GOP has, and they're talking about Hunter Biden. They got the pitchforks out for Hunter Biden, given the fact that the Trump family were not only, I remember, denied top secret clearance, then Trump bigfooted it, got them all top secret clearance. I'm talking about the sons. I'm talking about Ivanka, Jared included. Clearly, Trump himself never would have gotten top secret clearance were he not president. But anyway, more to the point, they enriched themselves immensely during the time that they were in, and they were directly connected. It wasn't even, from the outside in. So it's just there's an odd hypocrisy going on, and that's just working on a parallel track.
Yeah. Oh, first I want to get
Hunter Biden stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
First, I'd like to give some tax advice.
What?
He really is Michael Shure.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, I guess he is.
Kind of a big deal.
I'm struggling here, Mark. I can't hear you, so I'm working on it. So
okay, no problem. So far, you haven't missed anything.
But that's why divided government. I mean, the Senate could do something in retaliation here. Not that that's what they want to do, because they want to stick to substance, and they also have a slim majority over there, and it might sit well. But the hypocrisy is always making, and it works for them more than it works for the Democrats. It works for.
Why is that, Michael? Why can the GOP play outrage better than the Democrats can?
Well, because they always come home to roost, right? I mean, the no matter what, it comes down to judges. It comes down, they could hem and haw all they want about Donald Trump, but if he's the nominee, as was the case in 2016, when you had all those conservative Christians saying I could never vote for him, then he goes back as the candidate the next year after having won the nomination, and they're voting for him because they know where their bread is buttered. So they can put up with the hypocrisy out front if it advances their ability to be powerful. To stick with that same example, many Democrats who were supportive of Senator Sanders in 2016 didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. They'd said that they wouldn't, and they stuck with it, against perhaps their better interest, but as part of their core personalities. And that doesn't work politically. It works politically if you are hypocritical once in a while, and the Republicans have found a way to make that more effective.
Yeah, sure. With the jokes today, says C-Star Lady. I know he's always got he's always ready. You can wake him up in the middle of the night. He's got smart ass comments waiting to come. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks very much.
But it's suggested as well that, and this is in the chat, how come you're not yanking Clarence Thomas and Ginny Thomas in? How come there hasn't been legal action against them? It is weird how, I guess Clarence Thomas is sort of beyond. You go ahead, answer.
It could follow. Look, the House changing hands means that the January 6th committee is on its last fumes right now. And so the power of that committee, even the power of their subpoenas, they could be opposed. They could be sent to the courts. And then at the end of December, when the Congress changes in early January, it doesn't matter. They're all thrown out because the case is not pertinent anymore. So I think that effort will have to come sort of extra congressionally if that's going to happen. And then if something happens, then Congress can take a look at it. But I think it's more for Ginny Thomas than it is for Clarence Thomas, because Supreme Court justices, as I think you were about to say, Mark, sort of operate on a different plane. Exactly. They seem to be sort of beyond reproach. Jim, can you hear us now? I'm curious if, yeah, go ahead. Oh, well, we don't hear you. We need to unmute him.
You have to unmute yourself, dude.
Here you go. Go ahead.
Yes, I do hear you. So, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, I'm curious, then the January 6th committee they'll file their report, and then it will be dissolved, of course, with the GOP in charge. What will come of that, do you think? I mean, the tentacles of the coup attempt are extensive.
Well, I think that what's going to happen is that the January 6th report will come out, I hope, before the end of this Congress, which is at the end of the year. It will lay out what they believe Trump did and refer charges to the Attorney General. They can't charge in any way, as we all know. So it really is more of an informational exercise. They may try to pass some kind of law in Congress, but with the Republicans in charge, it's doubtful that'll happen. That would prevent this type of thing from going on, which would change would codify in stricter law, in fact, what a vice president is allowed to do, on January 6th, the next time. But as far as charges, they can't do anything anyway. It's really going to be a lot of rhetoric and referring to the Attorney General. It's up to Merrick Garland, and now it's up to the special prosecutor.
You mentioned the last thing of our last minute. You mentioned the codifying what can be done by a vice president, how that becomes just a pro forma thing, which it really was, just a ceremonial thing. But that has to be done. They've tried to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act, so that was clearly a priority. You can only get so much done in this lame duck session, and their priorities have been laid out, it seems, for them. I would have liked to have seen that Electoral Count Act get voted upon, but I think that's going to end up getting shoved off the agenda. Would you agree with that, Michael Shure?
I can't see how it stays on there right now. I mean, that's certainly, as what we've heard from Republicans so far since they've won, it's been announced that they've won and will control the next Congress, is nothing to do with anything like that. They're talking, as we saw, about Hunter Biden. It's not even that they're chasing caravans throughout Central America either. I mean, all these things that are campaign ideas go away very quickly for them, and they go for these headline-getting efforts. And this is not one that they would want to substantively change.
You can find Michael Shure on TYT, the TYT network, the largest online news network in the world. And you can find him here on Fridays. Jim is a regular political contributor on this show, and now he can speak with a freedom he never had before. You can also find him in our chat room many days. Big supporter, the award-winning journalist, former ABC senior correspondent. So cool to have you here too, Jim. So thank you, boys. Have a great weekend, both of you.